I think the next thing that bugs all entrepreneurs is कि name क्या रखें, नाम क्या रखें, and what should be the name of it. So I think there was a very interesting backdrop to it. I am personally very fond of this show called Silicon Valley. जो super hit show, right? Silicon Valley. तो उसमें company थी Hooliv, right? So I really always loved and admired the name Hooliv. So जब हमने student housing start करा, so I think it was a very natural extension कि Hooliv को Hooliv कर देते, so that's how Hooliv was born. And फिर हम उसका मीनिंग ढूंढने लगे कि does Hooliv mean anything in any language? And it turns out that in Estonian language or something, it means to care. And I got perfect. It's Hooliv to care. Sounds good for student housing, so Hooliv it is. So Hooliv ho gaya, and then recently we got into the women's housing, girls housing space. So there we created a separate brand called Sheeliv. So Sheeliv is possibly India's first, you could say, organized women's housing, initiative. So उसके ऊपर भी काफी काम कर रहा है. So now we have Hooliv and we have Sheeliv. So that's how the whole thing happened. Yeah. So there was no, bathtub eureka moment as such.
इंडिया में बहुत कम स्टार्टअप्स को ना एक्विजिशन या एमएनए देखने को मिलता है, बट इट्स अ मच सॉट आफ्टर एंड अ सेलिब्रेटेड ओकेजन. आज हम बात कर रहे हैं विद चिन्मय, हु इज द फाउंडर ऑफ हुलिव, अ स्टूडेंट को-लिविंग स्टार्टअप. बट इसके पहले ना चिन्मय हैड बिल्ट ऑल इज हेल्थ, अ हेल्थ टेक SaaS प्लेटफॉर्म, जो कि लेटर ना एक्वायर हुई बाय अ सिंगापुर बेस्ड कंपनी कॉल्ड विवांत. चिन्मय की जो करंट कंपनी है हुलिव, इट ऑपरेट्स इन अ हाईली कॉम्पिटिटिव एंड अ वेरी क्राउडेड स्पेस. आज बात करेंगे कैसे हुलिव खुद को डिफरेंशिएट करता है, बेसिकली कैसे क्राउडेड स्पेस में भी एक ब्रिलियंट एंड डोमिनेटिंग प्रोडक्ट बनाया जा सकता है. ऑल्सो चिन्मय इज अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग बिलीवर इन टेक एंड ऑल्सो इंडियन कंपनीज शुड बिल्ड ग्लोबल प्रोडक्ट्स एंड वेरी क्विकली एक्सपैंड आउटसाइड इंडिया. तो वो कैसे करते हैं? इस एपिसोड में वी टॉक टू अ सीजन्ड फाउंडर अबाउट चैलेंजेस इन बिल्डिंग अ बिजनेस इन इंडिया. इनफैक्ट छोटी छोटी चीजें जैसे आपके कस्टमर की बिल्ली का भागना टू डीलिंग विद मेजर केसेस ऑफ फ्रॉड इन योर स्पेस. We also discuss some of the most unconventional strategies for any startup. Don't miss watch till the end, but also one last bit. It would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to GoVenture channel at this point. Hey Chinmoy, welcome to podcast.
Hi Pritesh, good morning, and thank you so much for having me here today. Pleasure speaking with you.
तो चिन्मय, सबसे पहले ना मैं आपके प्रीवियस स्टार्टअप के बारे में बात करना चाहता हूँ. इट वाज acquired, right? Can you walk us through the procedure of an acquisition of a startup?
Sure, Pritesh. Pritesh, as founders, as entrepreneurs, when we start our venture, I think हम pitch deck पे कुछ भी दिखाएं in terms of the exits, possible exits, but I think an M&A or an acquisition is something that's the last on our minds. वो कभी cross नहीं करता. So when it happens, when it comes across, I think it's more serendipity than anything else. वो कहता है ना कि at a right price everything is for sale, and that is really true. It is. So I think about 2018 or 19, the first venture we had grown significantly. We had expanded outside of India. We were doing fairly well, and at that point in time, a Singapore-based group approached us. They had plans in the same space of health tech, and they were expanding in Southeast Asia. And what we had built was kind of complementary in nature to their offerings. So they saw great value in it, and they approached us, and they made an offer. Now the interesting thing, Pritesh, वो होता है कि उसके बाद start होता है when once you have an offer in hand. I think the real thing starts from there. What we did was that we broke it down the entire offer into 4 things. We said कि हमारे पास 4 stakeholders हैं, and we will consider the deal provided it makes sense to all the 4. It isn't 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4. 4 के 4 को it should make sense. So when you talk about that, you have 4 critical stakeholders. One is definitely your customers that you're serving. The second is your colleagues, your employees that are working with you. The third is your investors, existing shareholders, and finally the promoters. ये 4 major stakeholders there. So we evaluated the deal based on all these 4 stakeholders. The number one is customers, what we are providing them, the way that we are servicing them. We had to figure out if post acquisition it could actually make it better for them in terms of both क्या हम offer कर रहे हैं, in terms of the way we are servicing, in terms of just being the ability to provide them with much better things. So that was one critical evaluation criteria when it came to the customers. The employee side, mein, Pritesh, it was pretty straightforward again. Key one is that we have been working with those colleagues of ours for 4 or 5 years, and jitne bhi cliched it may sound, but first venture, when you have those few colleagues, you are a family. बहुत लोग बोलते हैं you should not consider it as a family, this and that, but it is very difficult to detach yourself. It's they have been through. They have been with you through all the ups and downs and stuff. So you build a different kind of bond, at least in your first venture. तो उसमें प्रीतिश हमें इवेलुएट करना पड़ा कि the employees, the colleagues who have been with us, will it make their life better? Are they getting a good hike? Is it commensurate with the market rates and so on? So that was another consideration for the employees part. The third one was again critical part was the shareholder part. We had existing investors, so the criteria was what kind of return they are getting. Will they be okay with this kind of return? Will we be happy giving them that kind of return? And that was the third. And then finally and lastly, Pritish, coming to the promoters part of it, यहाँ पे the decision becomes slightly bigger than the monetary aspects of it, because it's your first venture. You start it right from here. It's directly from your heart. So, and you treat it like a baby. So the question then becomes is कि क्या हम baby को किसी को दे सकते हैं? Are we giving it in trusted hands? Are we giving it in a safer hands? Can it grow from here? Can it be an independent, fly, have its own wings? So बहुत सारे, you could say, non-subjective considerations भी आ जाते हैं when it comes to promoters evaluating an M&A deal. You have your blood and sweat which has gone in literally, and you have toil, you have hustled, you have brought it to a stage. So वहाँ पे आके the considerations becomes monetary, part monetary. Obviously, monetary is significant. That it should be rewarding enough. It should be that for all the effort that you have put in, you have been able to create wealth for yourself. I think that is a key consideration. And apart from then, the subjective ones that, considering everything personally that is happening, considering the way that we're built, does it make sense? तो जो हमारे पास M&A the offer आया था Pritesh, so I think we evaluated based it on all these four criteria, and it did well. It did well on all those four aspects. It was a great return for our shareholders. I think one of the finest in the health tech space in India. We gave them very good returns. Our employee, it was an equi-hire, so all our employees were continuing, so there was nobody let go of, and the salaries were being revised. For the promoters, it was quite rewarding too. We had a cash plus equity exit. And lastly, for our customers, that's again, Pritesh, where we felt that our ability to go to the next level, and with keeping up with the pace with some of the clients that we are working, was slightly handicapped or hampered or not as per their expectation. Especially the rate at which we were able to service or grow. So we felt that maybe joining hands with this bigger entity with larger bandwidth, the bigger wallet, will help the product go to the next level, give it a better shape, and as a result, our clients would be benefited too. So that was the thought. So ये चार के चार Pritish, it's like चारों गुण मिल गए, you could say. So I think that made it the entire decision making much easier. So that's what happened, Pritish, during the entire evaluation period of it, and that was around 2018, mid of 2018 is when we finally said a yes to the offer. And yeah, after that, post that, it's primarily just your paperwork. I hope
So
I hope
Chinmoy, I
Pritesh
think
that gives you a color of
yeah, congratulations on that. But Chinmoy, एक चीज जो I've talked to a lot of companies that have received acquisition offers in the past of various types. What we understand is that not all acquisition offers are like what you said, right? सारे acquisition offers में ना चारों गुण मिल गए वाला factor होता नहीं है. A lot of them are very, I would say, stress offers. Most of the companies receive stress
yeah.
offers actually. So what I want to discuss is the part where before acquisition, how do you generate interest? ये M&A का interest कैसे लाएं? ये entities कैसे लाएं? How do you talk to companies? How do you initiate these discussions?
There are two parts to it, Pritesh, two ways rather, Pritesh. One is that you are standing out in the space that you are. आप ऐसा काम कर रहे हो where you are easily visible to the others, and I think that kind of is a pull factor. So a lot of strategic investors, strategic partners will come to you based on that with an acquisition offer, and typically larger corporates and larger ventures होते हैं who want to get that what you have as a complementary nature, and adds to their product offering, product portfolio. So एक तो वो pull हो गया Pritesh, and generally हमने ये देखा है Pritesh कि as in our case as in cases of other where it is not a distressed sale. वहाँ पे the pull factor works much better. Even in our case, we were actually, that group was in fact introduced to us through a customer of ours, who were very impressed with what we were offering, and they knew this group, the Singapore group as well. So the Singapore group, kabhi to they expressed interest कि they're looking for something like this, and the customer referred them to us. So वहाँ पे क्या होता है, Pritish, the discussions, the starting point is very different. Right, you are coming almost on an even kind of place, right? So you're equally matched in terms of what you have to offer and what they bring to the table. So the discussions, the valuations, the numbers, everything becomes very different. The other case में Pritesh होता है कि if we are distressed, if we are looking to move out of this space, we are looking to sell it off, and I think उस case में ज़्यादातर वो push वाला factor आ जाता है, where we might approach people directly, strategic partners, या फिर we might go through investment bankers and give them a clear mandate that, hey, look guys, we are looking to sell, we're looking for somebody to come and acquire. तो उस केस में the challenge हो जाता है Pritish कि the negotiating power that you have is kind of slightly diminished because the other party knows that it's a distressed sale. Right, and it is just like in any other deal. I think जब आपको पता है कि the other party is slightly down, you would also start at a position which you feel the other party might agree to, rather than what you call as a fair valuation or a fair number. Right. So दोनों चीजें हो जाता है Pritish. So it depends on आपका position क्या है, where you are coming from, what's your situation, whether it's a pull or a push. But both these factors work, and I think if bifurcate it to these two ways segments, you will see that the majority of deals where people went home happy, they have been when it was a pull thing. When they were doing phenomenally well, when they attracted suitors, rather than the push wala. Push wala is inevitably is a distress sell. Right? Very rarely, in case the founders, जैसे कभी कभी ये भी होता है कि even my friend circle बहुत बार ये हुआ है कि the guys have built something phenomenal, but for various reasons, maybe they are just techies, they don't know how to sell, they don't know how to go to the next level, and so on. उस case में they feel that maybe somebody larger with complementary skill sets, they take over and then the product can go up to the next level. तो वो भी होता है. It's not really a distress sell. So they are looking for suitors to take to the next level, but वो rare scenarios हैं. So ये मैंने देखा है British market में कि this pull and the push, they eventually determine how happy the every stakeholder is post the deal.
So when you had interest, Chinmoy, from this company, Singapore-based company for acquisition, so आपने उस time पे did you start exploring more and more? Did you go to an investment banker कि we are exploring M&A options?
Not really, Pritesh. Not really. We were actually looking उस time पे we were actually looking to raise our next round of funds. Right. So we were looking to raise our next round of funds. So M&A, जैसे मैंने कहा, it had never crossed our mind. So when this offer came in, it was a good offer. Good offer for all the four stakeholders that I mentioned. So yeah, it post that we liked that group, Pritish. It was you could say the wavelengths were matching, and we felt that the baby is in safe hands now. ये आगे बढ़ सकता है, it can grow, have wings of its own and so on. तो उसके बाद फिर then we didn't really shop around. We didn't go to the market saying, hey look, ये हमारे पास term sheet है for M&A. Let's find a better suitor. हमने वो करा नहीं था. I think this thing happened so quickly, so fast, and there was no reason for us actually to do that. अगर हम करते भी Pritish उस time पे, तो it would have been more in lines of raising a fund rather than M&A के लिए finding out in a second offer.
Got it. So
वो
that
कभी
was
cross नहीं
how.
करा, never crossed our mind.
So I guess that was how Allies Health got acquired by Vivant, right? These are the two companies that we're talking about.
Correct.
And this was one of the first
Yeah.
acquisitions in the health tech space in India, right? One of the first successful exits India में इससे पहले शायद I think कोई health tech में I can't recall, and probably कोई थे भी नहीं शायद, right?
Sure.
ठीक है. And then you
Yeah.
started your second venture, which is Hooliv, right? You started your second venture Hooliv,
Yeah.
and आपकी पिछली company health tech space में थी, and you were able to successfully deliver. So why did you decide to start up in a totally different space then?
So Pritesh, few different factors. One was that after every M&A you have a non-compete, right? So and all my life I have been in the health tech space. So जब health tech में non-compete था, then everything else was the same to me. I didn't know anything else. So every other space that I would have picked would have been new and the first time for me. So I think so. The canvas was wide open. एक बार health tech चला गया, तो everything else was open to us, right from fintech. We also I think kind of flirted with the agri tech space for a bit and so on. तो सारे spaces open थे. And the funny thing is, Pritish, मेरे और तीन partner है जो मेरे साथ previous venture में भी थे और अभी भी हैं. I think they gave me a very clear mandate and काफी easily उन्होंने बस निकल गए वो बोल के कि Chinmoy, whatever space you pick, just count us in. I think that was the only mandate. They put everything on my shoulder. I have to pick the space, and so I think there wasn't pretty as such any eureka moment. नाते नाते समझ में आ गया कि अरे we have to do Hooliv, we have to do student housing. So I
So
don't
what
think there
was
was any
going
such
on?
moment.
चिन्मय, किस टाइप के डिस्कशन चल
We
रहे थे उस टाइम पे?
we were looking at different things to do of it. So actually, क्या हुआ था? The way that we got into student housing was something related to my first venture. In fact, the first venture में क्या था? We were working with a group in Singapore who were into adult. We were into senior care. Adult housing. You could say senior care, senior living. Right. So they were into that kind of senior homes and so on in Singapore. So we were providing our platform, our solutions to them so they were doing the health checkup of the senior citizens who stayed with them, and they were using our platform to record and monitor those data and so on. तो उनके साथ हमने काम करा था, and we were very fascinated with that concept. So we wanted to do something similar in India as well. क्योंकि इंडिया में हमें लगा कि when it comes to senior housing, senior care, there is a big vacuum. You either have those poorly run nursing homes जहाँ के भी किसी को हम भेजेंगे नहीं, or you have the very high end ones where you have to invest a pretty significant amount to send your grandparents or any your dear ones. तो बीच में कुछ नहीं था. So there's still a vacuum. तो हमें लगा कि this is a good space. So जब हम निकले विवान से, all is well, विवान से जब निकले, तो we had actually started exploring this space in terms of senior care, senior housing in India. What our survey or research resulted in, Pritesh, हमें ये लगा कि one was that India was that concept was slightly ahead of time for an Indian market. एक तो ये था principally because sending our parents, grandparents to any such care, any such facility is still a taboo in India. To some extent, it is opening up. More and more people are open to the idea, but still थोड़ा taboo है as compared to the Western countries for good and bad. There's various societal reasons. तो हमें लगा कि slightly ahead of time, so we actually shelved that. So when we were looking at this entire senior care housing and stuff, that's the time we came across the whole student housing, executive housing, and so on. तो हमें लगा कि यार why not we look at a student housing to get a foot in the door. क्योंकि अगर आप तीन segments देखो, student housing, executive housing, and senior care, they all come under the big umbrella of shared accommodation, kind of. तो हमें लगा कि maybe student housing is a good way to get into the shared accommodation space, and then gradually we get into executive housing, senior care, and so on in due course of time. So that is how with entire kind of thing one thing led to another, and we ended up with the student housing. The other one also, Pritish, ये था कि जब when the consideration came between student housing and executive housing, I think student housing was an easier choice for us simply because all four of us at some point have been students who have lived in dorms, lived in hostels. तो वो the challenges हमने face करा था, some of those things still remain, unfortunately. So we could relate to the problem much better. I have never stayed in an executive housing and so on, so I could never relate to that. And मेरे चार partner तो बस whatever I decide they go with that. So I think that's how we got into the entire student housing space. Okay. And so when we got into that, I think the next thing that bugs all entrepreneurs is कि नाम क्या रखें, and what should be the name of it. So I think there was a very interesting backdrop to it. I am personally very fond of this show called Silicon Valley. It was a pretty super hit show, right? Silicon Valley. तो उसमें company थी Hooliv. Right? So I really always loved and admired the name Hooliv. So जब हमने student housing start करा, तो I think it was a very natural extension कि Hooli को Hooliv कर देते हैं. So that's how Hooliv was born. And फिर हम उसका मीनिंग ढूंढने लगे कि does Hooliv mean anything in any language? And it turns out that in Estonian language or something, it means to care. And I got perfect. It's Hooliv to care. Sounds good for student housing, so Hooliv it is. So Hooliv ho gaya, and then recently we got into the women's housing, girls housing space. So there we created a separate brand called Sheeliv. So Sheeliv is possibly India's first, you could say, organized women's housing, initiative. तो उसके ऊपर भी काफी काम कर रहे हैं. So now we have Hooliv and we have Sheeliv. So that's how the whole thing happened. Yeah. So there was no bathtub eureka moment as such.
Mm-hmm. Got it, got it, got it. And like आपका experience कैसा रहा है चिन्मय? You started up again and it was very different from your first venture. How is your experience starting up again? And how is it different from starting up for the first
I
time?
think काफी बहुत सारी चीजें डिफरेंट हो जाती हैं प्रीतिश एंड फॉर गुड एंड बैड गुड एंड बैड
Mm-hmm.
if I talk about the good parts first, it is that what we realize, Pritish, ki the whether it is a health tech, whether it is
Mm-hmm.
real estate,
Mm-hmm.
hospitality, agri tech, fintech,
Mm-hmm.
कोई भी आप ले लीजिए. I think एक चीज हमने realize करा कि the foundations or the fundamentals of building a
Mm-hmm.
business are the same. It is your due diligence in terms of your hiring your colleagues, in terms of your the regulatory aspects, in terms of your legal aspects, in terms of the way that you communicate with your colleagues, your stakeholders, your shareholders, your customers. I think वो काफी चीजें same है. The fundamental of building that business. Where I think
Mm-hmm.
we had to kind of struggle initially was when it came to the domain part of it. हम चारों में से we are all technocrats. We had no experience of hospitality or real estate. So I think वहाँ पे हमें काफी सीखना पड़ा. We had to go through the rigor to learn, and that is one of the reason जब हमने start करा, we were looking for a strategic partner to come on board who kind of came in with this particular knowledge of real estate and hospitality. So that is how we ended up getting a group called Kolte Patil Developers. They're a public listed real estate group headquartered in Pune. So they came in on our cap table. That was in Feb 2020, specifically with an intent to fill up this part of the thing, gap that we had, or the handicap that we had in terms of our understanding the nuances of this space. So वहां पे हमने देखा प्रीतिश की the difference comes in is that in terms of the domain part of it, but बाकी in terms of building the laying the foundation, everything is the same, even to minute thing, Pritesh, जैसे the way you interact with your colleagues, the way that you are transparent with your shareholders, the way that you share monthly updates with them and so on, the way that you are upfront with your customers, right? So I think those things remain irrespective of the industry that we are working in. Okay, so that is one good thing, Pritesh, that happens. The second one ये होता है Pritesh कि first venture में, since we're all new to the first venture, we have not done it before and so on, we are often, you could say, blindsided with a lot of noises happening around us in terms of कि इसने इतना फंड रेज कर दिया, इसको ये कस्टमर साइन अप कर लिया, इसने इतना रेवेन्यूज कर लिए. So there is, and we are so connected right now that it's very difficult to escape such news, and at some point in time it starts becoming noise. To a lot of entrepreneurs who are not experienced, first time entrepreneurs, very easily ये हो जाता है कि अरे यार उन्होंने ये कर लिया, हम क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे, उन्होंने ये कर दिया, हमने ये नहीं किया. So it, एक बार आप blindsided हो गए, then you start taking turns and detours which there is no coming back from. So second venture में प्रीतिश हमने ये देखा है based on a first venture's experience that you just turn a just put on your blinkers and you don't need to bother or care about these things क्योंकि आपको पता है कि what you see on news media, on startup medias and stuff is rarely what you get. The reality of things are very very different than what all of us guilty. All of us as entrepreneurs, we are guilty of painting a much rosy picture, upfront, and reality में things are maybe slightly different. So that builds you that patience कि भाई इसको जो करना है वो करते रहे. Our biggest, I think, challenge is in terms of keeping up our own passion, keeping up our own belief, and doing what we think is the right path. Obviously, you can't lose sight of your competitors, but not get bothered or obsessed with them. First venture में वो होता है प्रीतिश कि we get obsessed with our customer, with our competitors. तो वो एक चीज अच्छा हो जाता है प्रीतिश कि you are much more laser focused on what you do and so on. तो ये तो हो गया good parts, but then there are certain bad parts too. It's almost Pritish like कि आप अगर एक बच्चे को स्की करने के लिए सिखाते हो, स्विमिंग सिखाते हो एक छोटे से बच्चे को, he or she will learn it very very quickly because they don't know the consequences. Right, they don't know that they can sink, they don't know that if they fall while skiing what could happen. तो वो सीख जाते हैं. But what prohibits us is that fear, right? As an adult it's very difficult for us to learn because हम डरते हैं कि यार मैं गिर गया तो चोट लग जाएगी. So I think the second venture Pritish वो चीज negative हो जाता है. You are not as you could say the daredevilry थोड़ा कम हो जाता है. That kamikaze nature that you had in your first venture वो थोड़ा कम हो जाता है, thinking कि यार मैं ऐसा करूंगा तो शायद ये गलत हो जाएगा. So I think that risk taking ability is down a little bit. You start thinking a lot from here than from here. and that's not
Mhm.
always a good thing. You know, तो वही हो जाता है प्रीतिश कि while hindsight can give you the knowledge to not repeat some of the mistakes, but
Mhm.
hindsight
Mhm.
can be limiting too. You know, hindsight में आप देखते हो तो लाइफ का सब डिसीजन गलत लगता है. You know,
Mhm.
so then ये हो जाता है कि आप everything that you then try to do, you try to, you know, almost like पैरालिसिस बाय एनालिसिस हो जाता है कि यार पिछली बार
Mhm.
भी हमने ये करा था, ऐसे हुआ था, ऐसे हुआ था, ऐसे हुआ था, सो लेट्स नॉट डू इट दिस टाइम. तो वो एक नेगेटिव हो जाता है. बट यस, आई थिंक द वे दैट यू अप्रोच अ बिजनेस is very different. The first time you are looking for, you know, you're looking for growth at all cost and so on. I think second time you're looking more at a distribution. You're looking at how to be cautiously optimistic and cautiously aggressive. Look at more about responsible growth. कि भाई growth तो करना है, but it should be responsible growth. And first venture में I think you are more, you know, more you could say Tom Hanks kind of thing. And second, you know,
Mhm.
Tom Cruise rather first venture में. Second venture में you become slightly more Tom Hanky. You know, so the way difference हो जाता है.
I think a lot of people say that when you're starting up for the first time, you focus on risk, you focus on doing a lot of things, right? And you focus on executing all of those things really quickly. So आप second time start करते हो, like you mentioned, आप focus करते हो distribution पे, right? You try to get your customers right and all of that. But Chinmoy, आपने जब when you started Hooliv, you mentioned that you onboarded a strategic investor, like real estate investor थे जिनको आपने
Yeah.
onboard किया अपने capital पे. How do you think strategic investor, can you give us some examples how they were able to support your venture, how they were able to support
Yeah.
your journey?
Sure, sure. So I think one of the big reason, Pratish, is that the reason we look for strategic investors is definitely that because they bring in something much more than just the money. You know, they bring
Mhm.
different kind of skill set to the table, which generally you don't possess. So जैसे हमारे case में as we onboarded this real estate group, I think the way that it helped us was one with their own inventory. So especially in Pune
Mhm.
region, they had unused inventories and stuff, which we could take up and convert that into student housing, so large inventories.
Mhm.
Second is that they themselves had made a commitment that they would be investing further in terms of constructing the student housing units. जो कि, you know, they are to be on their books and then we manage and operate and so on. And lastly, it is British, you know, using their credibility or the name in the market. So when we are looking at approaching large other builders who have so student housing units, the moment we mention the name of Colte Patil Group and so on, that's a different credibility that is built. कि हाँ, if they have the Colte Patil backing, that means they are doing something. You know, they're not novices and so on. So वो एक different credibility बन जाता है, Pritesh, which had helped us not only get a foot in the door with these builders, but at the same time get a much better rate than what we might have got if we would have approached them directly. You know, so
Mhm.
we have kind of encashed on their name as well on the market to get favorable rates and so on. So इस तरह से भी help हुआ है. And then now what the longer term Pratish ये है कि we are also now looking. So अभी तक we were very asset light model. You know, we were not owning any lands, buildings, and so on. But now gradually with more and more operating experience, we are looking at in maybe year, 2 years time, we're actually looking at owning hard assets. You know, land ho gaya, we
Mhm.
take up a land parcel and then we construct our own student housing unit and so on. I think wahan pe bhi Pritesh, getting somebody or having somebody who has actually the experience in construction industry is again a boon. You know, we can leverage on them, leverage on their experience to help us actually construct the student housing units. So वो एक
Mhm.
longer term part भी है Pritesh. So that is how that we're looking at. But fundamentally, when we are taking up somebody as a strategic partner, Pritesh, the उसका benefit ये होता है कि their expectation of a return or an exit is not similar to what an institutional capital might have. You know,
Mhm.
so they are with you for the longer term. They are looking at, you know, exiting whenever you exit. Maybe it's an IPO, maybe it's an M&A or so on. They're not there for the thing that, you know, you raise your next round of funds and you do a secondary and give us an exit, which is, you know, very unlike an institutional capital. So that is where their good part comes in, that you can encash or you can leverage on their strengths,
Mhm.
but at the same time you're not under the gun all the time कि मुझे इनको exit देना है, right? So
Mhm.
that's the good part, Pritesh. But negative part of strategic investor and any strategic investor, not just with us, but जो भी strategic investor लेते हैं, वो ये हो जाता है कि the kind of valuation that you command with a strategic investor vis-a-vis an institutional guy will be slightly on the lower side. Because the strategic investor is also not a fool, right? They're coming and saying, look, guys, we're not just bringing in the money, but we're bringing in XYZ as well. So we need, a higher
Mhm.
percentage. So the valuation comes down, the dilution is slightly higher, and so on, as compared to institutional capital. right? वो it gets negated in the sense, Pritish, that once a strategic partner is on board, they typically have the muscle or the power to fund few rounds. It's not just the first round that they came on with, but subsequently अगर आपको funds चाहिए, then they have that ability to help you out. तो आपका जो एक दो राउंड का डाइल्यूशन है वो बच जाता है, but the initial dilutions or the initial valuation could be on the lower side and the dilutions could be on the higher
Mm.
side. वो एक downside है strategic capital का. But yeah, so I think it's depends on industry to industry a lot, Pritish. For example, हमारा जो first venture था, we among the four of us we had sufficient skills, sufficient competency to build it on our own. तो हमें we needed more of an institutional capital. We needed more of the capital than other kind of help. But second part में we needed more strategic. We needed people with understanding of this space. So we went for a different kind of investment. So I think it really depends और Pritish comes down to कि यार आप किस तरह के business में हो, आपको किस तरह का help चाहिए.
Got it. So you mentioned that when you're looking to acquire new assets, right? Typically, a lot of startups work on the asset light model, but हाँ, then there is DMart. DMart बहुत asset heavy model पे run करता है. Can you
Yeah,
give me some reasons? Can you like take me through how you're brainstorming on
sure.
acquiring new assets? Why and
A
how
number
both?
of things, Pritish. Yeah, number of things. एक तो ये है कि this the particular industry की अगर बात करो, real estate, hospitality and all. Unfortunately, the institutional capital flowing into this space is still restricted. कोविड प्री कोविड 2017 2018 में when this industry was starting out, तो उस टाइम पे काफी कैपिटल वाज फ्लोइंग है. बट देन आई थिंक अपना जो कोविड वेव एक्टेड एज अ डैम्पनर, क्योंकि आप ये भी था कि दिस पर्टिकुलर इंडस्ट्री वाज डायरेक्टली इन द लाइन ऑफ कोविड फायर. So the investor sentiment is yet to be as bullish in this industry as it was pre covid. तो वो institutional capital थोड़ा restricted है. So once that is restricted, you are left with either strategic capital partners or you are left with larger private equity folks who are into the real estate game. Right now, अगर आप private equity की बात करते हो Pritish, if you're talking about large private equity firms who are into real estate, alternate assets, and so on, उनके लिए the asset light model doesn't fly. Because asset light model के में आपका it's there is nothing on your books as such, right? For a private equity to take and turn it around. So that is where having real hard assets on your books makes you attractive for private equity play at a certain scale. Obviously, they will not come in at a very low scale, but at a certain scale, it will start making sense to them. So one, the reason why we're looking at that play, Pritish, is with an eye to that private equity play. That once we start getting these hard assets and so on, real estate on our books, we will become attractive to these folks. So that is one part, Pritish. The other part, Pritish, comes purely from our operating experience. ये हो जाता है कि when you take up an existing asset, जैसे हम कर रहे हैं which we are not taking on our books but asset light रख रहे हैं, very much like an Oyo townhouse kind of thing. When we take up an asset on a long term lease, तो बहुत टाइम पे ये हो जाता है. Now while it gives you the scalability factor, आप कम capital में you can scale much faster. Where you compromise on is the suitability factor of it. Not all buildings that we take up can provide us with the luxury to remodel it the way that we want to. हम चाहते हैं कि हमारे सारे प्रॉपर्टी में जिम हो, सारे प्रॉपर्टी में कैफेटेरिया हो, place for students to hang out and so on. So there could be some properties where it may not have that flexibility to redo it, the way that we want to. तो वहां पे आपका चैलेंज आ जाता है. You can't provide the way that you want to. राइट. तो जबकि आपका स्केलेबिलिटी बहुत फास्ट है, आप कम कैपिटल में ग्रो कर रहे हो और एक्सपैंडिंग और एडिंग बेड्स, बट आपका सुटेबिलिटी कम हो जाता है. Now imagine the same thing, Pritish. If I have my own land parcel and I am constructing my own student housing unit, then I can do it exactly the way that I want. तो उस केस में क्या होता है Pritish, my suitability factor becomes much better. I can command a better rate because the students see that I have this XYZ amenities, it is built for that purpose. So I can command a better rate and the suitability factor is high. But yes, the capital invest, it is capital intensive, there is more capital required. तो आपका scalability factor कम हो जाता है but suitability factor बढ़ जाता है, right? So जैसे हमारा मान लीजिए जयपुर में we have 4 assets which are close to some 300 beds or so, right? And there are 4 different assets, Pritish. Now अगर and very close to each other. तो मान लीजिए अगर मैं अभी कंस्ट्रक्ट करता हूँ my own 400 bedded facility, I can move all the 400 students to this new property. I can cut down on the redundancies क्योंकि मुझे हर property में I need to have operating staff, I need to have a caretaker, I need to have a warden, I need to have housekeeping. So if I have one building, I can cut down a lot on the redundancies as well, and students will be happier and it's more suitable and so on. So इसी वजह से I'm keeping an eye on both these factors, Pritish. What we're looking at maybe in year 2 years time with more capital availability and after we raise some larger capital, we will be looking into these hard assets as well. So these are the two fundamental
Got
reasons.
it. अच्छा चिन्मय, आई अंडरस्टैंड टोटली वेयर यू कमिंग फ्रॉम, बट आप देखोगे तो कोलिव स्पेस है ना, बहुत क्राउडेड है, काफी सारे प्लेयर्स हैं. सो हाउ इज हुलिव डिफरेंट फ्रॉम ऑल ऑफ दीज प्लेयर्स?
Sure, sure. So what I always maintain, Pritesh, is that the market might be crowded, but it is far from being saturated. And very similar, Pritesh, where co-living is today is very similar to where e-commerce possibly was maybe 10 to 12 years back in India. उस टाइम पे आपके
डेफिनेटली.
कितने सारे players थे, right? You had Flipkart, Amazon, Shopclose, Snapdeal, so many players, and the industry currently is very, very similar. Pritesh. So maybe in the next 3 to 4 years time we will be increasingly seeing a lot of M&A in this space. Maybe हम किसी को acquire कर रहे हैं, maybe somebody tries to acquire us, whatever. So I think there could be a lot of M&A activities happening in this space. But एक चीज तो very again I draw a parallel, Pritish, कि आप अगर देखो the reason why we have Flipkart and Amazon still standing whereas others did not do as well is because Flipkart and Amazon, they realized very early on that the one of the big things in the e-commerce space was their investment in technology, whether it is their fulfillment, whether it is their sourcing, and so on. So I think both these guys invested heavily in technology, and that's one of the key reasons why they still are standing and doing so good, whereas other kind of fell by the wayside, right? So अगर आप सिमिलर चीज देखो प्रीतिश, इवन इन दिस मार्केट व्हेन वी गॉट इनटू दिस स्पेस, राइट, सभी हमको कहते थे यार ये रियल एस्टेट है, हॉस्पिटैलिटी है, इसमें टेक्नोलॉजी का कोई काम नहीं है. बट आई थिंक given that Pritish, our DNA is technology, all four of us, it was just not acceptable to us. So we went ahead and we built this entire tech platform in house. And it is possibly one of the finest tech platforms for this industry, co-living industry at this moment. We signed up.
कैन
In
यू गिव
fact,
एन
one of our large
एग्जांपल?
competitors has signed up
कैन यू गिव एन एग्जांपल?
of the technology platform,
या
of the
या
tech part of it. Pritish?
या
Sure, sure, absolutely happy to. So मान लीजिए मेरा मेरठ में एक प्रॉपर्टी है. Okay, I have a property and the warden tells me that sir 30 rooms are occupied. Okay, but in reality there might be 31 rooms occupied. एक रूम में वो किसी को रख के he might be just taking the money, you never know. Right? So हमने क्या करा Pritish, what we did is we installed something like smart electric meters in all our rooms. Okay, now this smart electric meter वो हमारे CRM के साथ connected है. So unless and until a room is enabled on the CRM, there won't be any power supply to the room. ओके, तो भले ही वो वार्डन किसी को रख ले बट देयर वोंट बी एनी पावर सप्लाई, गीजर नहीं चलेगा, कोई पावर पॉइंट नहीं चलेगा, फैन नहीं चलेगा, कुछ नहीं चलेगा, राइट? सो दैट एक्ट्स एज एन इनहिबिटर फॉर देम टू हाउस समबडी. रख तो लो पर व्हाई वुड समबडी स्टे? तो दैट वाज वन थिंग. सेकंड ये था प्रीतिश की मान लीजिए मेरा कोई वार्डन है जयपुर में, सो एवरी मॉर्निंग वी हैव आवर सिटी हेड्स हु गेट ऑन ए कॉल विद द वार्डन्स. ओके, नाउ वार्डन कहेगा कि हाँ सर मैं प्रॉपर्टी पे हूँ, मैं देख रहा हूँ, ये कर रहा हूँ, बट इन रियलिटी द वार्डन माइट बी जस्ट सिटिंग एट हिज होम. How do you know that? तो हमने क्या करा प्रीतिश, we installed a geo tagging and an image recognition on our platform. तो अभी क्या होता है, सारे housekeeping, each and every housekeeping staff, every morning at 9 they have to turn on the camera and take a picture. They have to turn on the app and take the picture. The Hooliv का app है. So what it does is it takes my picture, it maps it with the does an image recognition, then does a geo tagging, geo fencing, and says okay, Chinmoy is at the place where he or she is assigned. तो मैं प्रॉपर्टी पे ही हूँ, so everyone has a location assigned to them. तो अगर वो डिटेक्ट करता है कि आई एम एट अ डिफरेंट लोकेशन एज कंपेयर टू दिस, तो मेरे को एब्सेंट मार्क कर देता है. एंड दोज एंटायर एब्सेंट प्रेजेंट अगेन इज डायरेक्टली लिंक्ड विद द पेरोल व्हिच वी बिल्ट इन हाउस. तो कोई उसमें मैनुअल इंटरवेंशन नहीं है, कुछ नहीं, राइट फ्रॉम अटेंडेंस टू पेरोल, राइट? So that cut down a lot on my wardens and my housekeeping, trying to do anything smart. कि भाई अगर हम 9 बजे हमारा इस लोकेशन पे नहीं है, we will mark absent for that day, right? So छोटी छोटी ऐसी चीजें प्रीतिश ऐड होती गई प्लेटफॉर्म में, and that happened because it came from our own operating experience. जैसे मान लीजिए हमने जब शीलिव स्टार्ट करा, what we realized that when it comes to girls housing, girls accommodation, the parents are very very particular. Just parents are very particular, Pritish, when it comes to three things, that is safety, security and privacy. Right? So हमने अभी ये करा प्रीतिश कि in all our girls facilities, the she live facilities, we capture the images directly from the CCTV. We do again an image recognition क्योंकि हमारे पास वो है कि इस प्रॉपर्टी में these are the people who are authorized to be in this property. So if there is an image which doesn't match, it sends a signal to the warden saying that somebody unauthorized is trying to access the property. So it just adds an extra layer of security. So each of season धीरे धीरे होके Pritish it gets built up, right? From vendor management to MIS to housekeeping to doing an audit of a property, everything is now online. Okay, so वो तो एक part हो गया Pritish on the operations part of it. Even on the student part of it, what we realized, Pritish, is that when you talk about a 23, 24-year-old student, the most expensive real estate they own is their smartphones, right? And the more and more we can push things on the smartphone, then we can give them a more experiential state, going beyond just a roof on their head. तो अभी हमने क्या करा है, we started something like a night kitchen where we created a clone of Swiggy Zomato, so students can order something from their rooms in the middle of the night. We have a 24-hour kitchen running and it gets delivered to them on the doorstep. We launched something like an OLX equivalent where outgoing students, students who are graduating out, they can put in the things they want to sell and it gets distributed within the Hooliv community and other students can buy it. Okay. Then third one, Pritish, we have now partnered with internship, guys who provide internship companies. So all our students have access to internships which are available to them. Similarly, abhi hum aur ek cheez kar rahe hain, we are trying to partner with the groups who are into soft skill programs, spoken English courses, job interview skills, and so on. So wo bhi we can push directly to the students on their Hooliv app. So ये सारी चीजें Pritish keeps on adding, and all these things are possible because we have that core foundation of technology built in. आज के तारीख में अगर मेरे पास नहीं होता Pritish, my only option left would have been to either sublicense something or maybe acquire a tech company to get those competency in house. And that is where I drew a parallel with Flipkart and Amazon and their investment in technology. Okay, so that is one part, Pritish. So I believe that in the next 4 to 5 years, एक तो आपका काफी M&A होने वाला है इस industry में, and second, the people who have invested in technology, and not just Hooliv, there are other our competitors too who are doing equally well. Those are the ones who will be the last man standing. वो है. There's another part also, Pritish, जो आपने पूछा in terms of the crowded market. अगर आज के डेट में देखें Pritish, again another industry that I can draw parallel with is the diagnostic space. The diagnostic industry, क्योंकि मैं healthcare, so I know this space very well. The diagnostic industry जो आपका है, the path tests and lab tests जो करते हैं, you will be surprised to know that despite everything, the SRLs, the Dr. Lals, the Metropolis, everyone combined, the organized players, they still cater to not more than 14 to 15% of checkups which happen daily. तो बाकी जो 80-85% checkups होते हैं वो कहाँ होते हैं? They all happen in unorganized labs, mom and pop labs. इस इंडस्ट्री में, हमारी इंडस्ट्री में Pritish, the scenario is exactly the same. Hooliv हो गया या फिर our peers, we cater to not more than just the tip of the iceberg. The majority of the market, 95-96% of this market, is still operated by unorganized players. Mom and pop players, जो एक PG चलाते हैं, एक hostel चलाते हैं, and so on. So that's where the opportunity for us lies. To go in and make it a complete organized play. And when I say we could be all 4 or 5 of us and so on. Very similar, Pritish, to what Oyo did to the hotel industry. For all good, bad, ugly, I think Oyo phenomenally transformed the hotel industry, the way it was unorganized. और हमारे space में भी Pritish, all of us, we have an opportunity to do that, right? And last part, Pritish, अगर आप market का sense लो, so a lot of reports, as per if you go by the jail reports, Cushman reports, and so on, there is a need currently for almost 9 million student housing beds. Okay, and the student housing operators like us, we cater to not more than 100-200,000 beds at the moment. So that's how big this space is, and that's how unorganized this space is. So that is where I say, Pritish, that the market might be crowded, but it is not saturated. If you go in with a good offering, a great value to the students, you have a chance to capture this market. So that is where this industry is, Pritish.
So Chinmoy, based on our discussion, I have a question for you. I want you to help
Sure.
me understand, are you guys more into a real estate kind of a business or more into a hospitality business?
I would say, Pritish, that in this particular, it's very similar to a restaurant or a hotel industry. Is that your location and your real estate absolutely matters, because आप students के साथ cater कर रहे हो. So if you have an asset which is say more than 1.5 kilometer away from their coaching center or college, it becomes very difficult to fill occupancy, even if you are providing a Taj experience, right? So I would say, Pritish, that we are predominantly into the real estate space. Okay, the services part ho gaya, the offerings part ho gaya, I think it will be second in priority for me, because at some point in time, Pritish, it becomes almost templatized. Yeah, almost templatized key is part of our service offering, and then because of our technology platform and so on, it's very easy for us to copy and paste the services model of it. Right, कि इस तरह से मान लीजिए छोटी से छोटी चीजें होती है, इस तरह से petty cash management होगा, इस तरह से warden को ये authority है, this is how the attendance tracking will happen. All these things have become almost templatized, right? So the services part of it, British follows, but I would say the real estate part of it is absolutely critical. you know, right from not just ki aapka proximity to institutes and so on, but ki aapka, what kind of amenities you can provide in a particular facility, even the approach road to an asset. Does the asset have all the proper licenses or not, the commercial licenses? Does it have a separate a transformer or not? Aapka fire protection, fire licenses hai ki nahi? So all these things, Pritish, makes it much more of a real estate game rather than a services part.
Hmm. And Chinmoy, so you guys have been building Hooliv for 4 years now. आपकी एक्सपीरियंस में सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज आपके क्या रहा है? What has been your most challenging experience building Hooliv, and how did you navigate through it?
Um, I think ये था प्रतीक कि the previous venture में, because it was so tech heavy, right, with B2B customers and tech heavy and so on. So tech was predominantly the driver of the business there, right? यहाँ पे जब आए प्रतीश, तो it definitely there is a big services part to it. और ये हो जाता है कि the moment you have a services part, the moment there are people involved, and people are the same everywhere, moment you get a chance to do something not by the books, you will not do it by the books, let's put it in that way. So jaise maine kaha ki there is propensity for wardens to do something wrong. There is a housekeeping management issues. We hum sare properties mein we run our own kitchen, because we believe that food is an essential component. We cannot outsource that, simply to maintain the quality and stuff. तो आप अगर kitchen setup कर रहे हो, you have the kitchen management, you have the staff to manage. So इस particular space में Pratish, the managing of these people becomes absolutely crucial or critical. तो वो skill जो था Pratish, at least with the four of us, having worked in larger companies and then into a B2B setup, and now when we are looking at a services heavy, so that became quite a bit challenging. कि you take a lot of people by the face value. You trust what the other party is saying, but gradually हमने ये realize करा Pritish कि people do what you inspect and not what you expect. So that was a lesson learned the hard way. So now that's the reason that the tech को हम इतना intuitive बना रहे हैं कि the gaps or the loopholes are all covered, and that reduces chances for people to do anything wrong. It should be so intuitive. जैसे मैंने smart meter का example दिया, you just can't do anything around that. आपको enable करना ही करना पड़ेगा. So these are the kind of things, these are the kind of contingencies we are building in to reduce leakages, reduce this kind of mishandling of things. So वो सबसे बड़ा part था Pritish कि तो, and also the another part Pritish is that when you are dealing with the blue collar workers, right, आपका housekeeping हो गया, the this thing, तो blue collar workers में churn भी काफी ज्यादा है. So वो churn कैसे आप control करोगे, churn कैसे manage करोगे, so that also becomes a headache quite often. And then last and part with this is that here you are dealing directly with the customers. It's a more of a B2C. You have customers who are staying on a property. They expect a certain level of service, certain level of standard, right from आपका daily housekeeping हुआ कि नहीं, to पानी नहीं आ रहा है, to Wi-Fi is down and so on. And typically what happens is आप भी देखे होगे, if we are happy with a restaurant, we want to leave a review. But if we are upset, then we will leave a review, right? So I think this is very typical of a services industry. So then वो हो जाता है कि cater कैसे करो, रात को 3 बजे कोई there's a big uproar in some property that hey यहाँ पे internet down हो गया है. So what do? Somebody calls you up at 4 in the morning and says my cat has run away. I can't live without my cat. So what do? So there's a very different kind of nature of problem, more humane you could say, that level. तो उस सब से deal करना, we're still learning the tricks of this trade. काफी काफी जगह पे हम smart बनते जा रहे हैं. But I think managing these expectations, managing the staff, is the biggest challenge of this industry.
Has that actually happened? My cat has run away and your team got a call. And how do you handle something like that?
It has. There's no way we somehow to passive. It was actually a girl who उसके साथ हुआ था. So apparently the cat उसके पास में, the property that we have उसके पास में एक housing society है. So I think the cat had run away to that society. So morning में we had to look through the CCTV and figure out where the cat went, and we realized that cat went to the other society. So एक दो दिन बाद आ गया वापस, thankfully. But इस तरह की भी चीजें होती हैं. So, then there was another very funny thing. There was another facility where the apparels, or rather the undergarments, were getting stolen. And when for a lot of people, so when it got reported, I think the first suspicion obviously went to the staff and the housekeeping staff and so on. So CCTV dekha gaya and all that, and we figured that there was actually another tenant who was waking up at middle of the night and stealing this. So one of their friends. So इस तरह की चीजें, lots and lots of funny things with this will also happen. Which I think that's the nature of the beast.
I think I think Chinmay, that brings me to a question that I had is कि आप ना नया वेंचर जब चालू करते हो, there are a lot of new learnings, right? आप आप हेल्थ टेक से मूव किए, आप रियल एस्टेट के and obviously healthcare, hospitality के स्पेस में आप आए. तो what were some of the things that you tried and you failed miserably? कि अरे ये तो मतलब बहुत different है in the hospitality space.
Um, I think इतना the dealings have been significantly different. Pritesh, वहाँ पे आप B2B large insurance customers and ये थे. I think जहाँ पे हम fail हुए Pritesh is that expecting maybe the same level of professionalism from the people that we're dealing in this venture. जहाँ पे आप छोटे छोटे cities में हो गया, you're talking about asset owners who may not be at the same level when it comes to professionalism as compared to large B2B clients that you're dealing with. ये नहीं कि large B2B clients cannot be unprofessional, but I think you set off with that expectation कि there will be a level of professionalism. So उस वो thing इस space में काफी different है. If your rental payments get delayed to the asset owners, then they obviously come back to you with the choicest of words. और अगर वो दिल्ली नॉर्थ साइड में है तो I think the conversation is takes very different tone and tenor as compared to say Pune people are much more subtler, Maharashtra. But I think वो हमने गलती कर दी थी प्रीतिश की हुई, and even I think that led us to omit certain things in the agreements also, thinking कि हाँ ये तो understood है, ये तो basic है, given है. So I think वहाँ पे हम एक we have learned it the hard way, Pritish, कि this industry expects a different level of or you could say rather इस space में अगर रहना है तो I think you'll have to get down to a different level. जो कि at times it becomes difficult for us, never having dealt with this kind of language or that kind of professionalism. But hey, जब रोजी रोटी पे आता है तो सीखना ही पड़ता है, right? So, but I think that's been a big learning.
Can you like give an instance where you had to go all out to deal with such a flare up maybe?
A lot of times I think somebody, जैसे मान लीजिए आप कहीं पे आपका बोरवेल काम नहीं कर रहा है, तो मे बी द पंप दैट द ओनर प्रोवाइडेड इजंट वर्किंग. तो आप सुबह जाके बोलो दिस इजंट वर्किंग, तो वो बोल रहे हैं किसी को भेज रहा हूँ. टिपिकली इन दिल्ली साइड व्हाट यू रियलाइज इज दिल्ली में आपको कोई भी बोलता है प्रीतिश कि हाँ लड़का निकल गया रास्ते में है, दैट लड़का इज नो वेयर, वो अगले दिन ही पहुंचेगा. तो दे दे ऑब्वियसली दे डोंट हैव इक्वल स्किन इन द गेम. उनको क्या फर्क पड़ता है कि वहाँ बच्चे शोर कर रहे हैं, पानी नहीं आ रहा है एंड ऑल दैट. तो काफी बार ऐसे होता है कि यू आस्क देम फॉर सर्टेन थिंग्स व्हिच दे हैव प्रोवाइडेड एंड इट्स नॉट वर्किंग एंड दे रिपेयर इट. तो एक दो दिन लगता है, तीन दिन लगता है, एंड देन यू हैव नो अदर ऑप्शन, राइट? आप खुद you invest and you get it done because your students are suffering. And then when you go back to them, this needs to be adjusted, that needs to be adjusted, then it comes back on you, nay, it is a regular wear and tear, it happened because of your usage, not because of our fault, and so on. So that discussions become ugly. And frequently, it happens very, very frequently, typically with the amenities that they're provided. If there is something that goes wrong with it, वो उनको समझा पाना मुश्किल होता है. काफी बार वो होता है कि बिल्डिंग्स पेंट की जरूरत है, यू नीड टू डू ए पेंट बिफोर वी गेट इट टेक ओवर. वहाँ पे हेजिटेशंस होता है. So, I think mostly what happens, Pritish, is it centers around the payments part of it. जब तक आपका रेंटल टाइम टू टाइम जा रहा है, everybody is drinking the same Kool-Aid. अगर पेमेंट्स लेट हो जाता है, then I think all hell breaks loose. So,
Yep. I think that reminds me, Chinmoy, of एक ना, I think 3-4 years back there was a company called Homigo, right? Right, and there was a major,
Oh my God.
again there was a major fraud
I think
case and all
IIT
of that.
Roorkee
Player
case.
बहुत
I think
ज़्यादा हुआ था.
students from IIT Roorkee.
हाँ, IIT कानपुर या रुड़की के बच्चे थे ये चार.
Yeah, somewhere.
And so मतलब there is some baggage also there. And मतलब अगर आप overall broader real estate को देखोगे ना, तो broader real estate में बहुत बड़ा baggage है. Intent का बहुत questionable है. There have been so many developers, बहुत सारे जेल में भी हैं and all that. North में और ज़्यादा है.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So मतलब do you have to deal with that baggage? Yeah, मतलब that's not on top of people's mind.
Not when we are dealing with asset owners, Pritish. It's more when we
Mhm.
are dealing with institutional capital, institutional investors. I think that baggage is always there. कि इसने ये करा, उसने वो करा, and so on. But not so much when we are dealing with asset owners because they, for some reason or the other, Pritish, a lot of them are isolated from what's happening elsewhere. Typically, क्या होता है Pritish? मान लीजिए जयपुर में, a couple of properties we have taken up is from a guy who is one of the richest jewelers. Runs jewelry shop and all there. तो कैसा था कि they have a land parcel. तो वहाँ के चारों तरफ Allen, Fitzy and all of that came up. So somebody advised them that why don't you create a student housing unit? अब student housing बना दीजिए और खाली पड़ा हुआ है land and so on. So he created a student housing, right? And then he had some mom and pop guy was running it. So when we go in Pratish and we say that look, we are an organized player, we're going to take it up. आपको जितना मिल रहा है, we will give you a delta higher. There's no headache, day-to-day options, in the grievances and all, we'll manage it. It becomes an easier sell for us. क्योंकि उसको पड़ी नहीं है. As long as you give him that monthly this thing, he's out of the picture. He doesn't care, right? कि बाकी real estate में क्या हो रहा है, how many people are going to jail, not going, कितना professionalism, it doesn't matter to him. So majority of cases Pritish इस तरह की हैं. All right. It's only when we're dealing with or trying to raise capital, when people are more informed in that sense, वहाँ पे the challenge आता है. People have examples to refer and cite and say कि इसके साथ ये हुआ, उसके साथ वो हुआ. But on the same front, अगर आप देखोगे in the last 5 or 6 years, an industry which is really taken up is construction tech. It is prop tech. Spaces like ours, and it's simply because Pritish ये होता है कि a lot of real estate groups that we have met, legacy real estate groups and so on, large real estate groups, they were run in a certain manner. But now what has happened, Priti, is the next generation which is taking over. They have pretty much, are very well educated. A lot of them have very good real estate backgrounds. कोई New York से पढ़ के आया है, from the real estate, school somewhere from London. ये वो. So they are bringing a different level of thought process or professionalism to this. तो धीरे धीरे our feeling is Pritish कि धीरे धीरे जो the you could say the negative connotations that we have with this real estate industry and so on. आप देखना कि धीरे धीरे with subsequent generations this will come down a lot. Very similar to the healthcare industry again. अगर आप देखो the new doctors who have are more embracing of technology than as compared to the previous generation, right? The similar thing Priti real estate में भी हो रहा है. You have the embassy group, जैसे आप बैंगलोर में मान लीजिए Virwan is taking over and so on. You have the brigade group. You have मान लीजिए लोधास where Abhinandan and those people are taking over the next generation. तो चीजें काफी बदल रही हैं. That is why you have again a lot of capital flowing into this space, flowing into construction tech and so on, because everybody is now liking the transparency. You have Sila Group, which is doing phenomenal work, जो कि पहले नहीं था. So that is why that baggage is still there, but I think it's a matter of time कि धीरे धीरे वो जाएगा. But yeah, that is what it is. Yeah.
DLF की एक प्रॉपर्टी है इन द एनसीआर रीजन, ठीक है. एंड मतलब आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट ट्रस्ट पार्ट हियर. तो एक तरफ डीएलएफ की प्रॉपर्टी है, बगल में एक और बिल्डिंग है, सम बाय M3M और समथिंग. आई थिंक द M3M डेवलपर्स आर इन जेल, आई बिलीव. So DLF is commanding a 40% premium for the exact same carpet area and everything, and probably the exact same amenities also, just because of the brand that they've been able to build, just because of the trust
Brand.
that they've been able to build. Ki we deliver, right?
Absolutely.
We're not gonna go
You
to
can
jail and we're
command.
not,
You can
you know.
command a premium. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I
there is
think
वो है
slight.
Pritesh. I think ये थोड़ा art market जैसा ही है. Same painting by M.F. Hussain, same painting by somebody else. Just the different price points, right? So I think वो है. Definitely there is there. But
Chinmoy,
I think काफी अच्छी
slightly,
चीजें भी हो रही है Pritesh. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
slightly. No, please go ahead. You were saying something.
नहीं मैं ये कह रहा था कि even with the RERA coming in, even government is looking at this space. Jackie, maybe a decade back, a real estate, chairman, promoters going to jail was unheard of, right? सभी पैसा देके निकल जाते थे. But I think that this group going itself sets a precedence कि भाई RERA is here to stay. RERA में भी काफी loopholes है, but I think it's a good start. Somewhere we had to start. So I think it's a good start in terms of protecting the consumer interests. तो धीरे धीरे हम प्रीतिश देखेंगे कि और भी स्ट्रेंथन होता जाएगा and a lot of real estate groups will have to toe the line.
Got it, got it. And like, थोड़ा सा slightly off the context maybe. But Chinmay, I want to understand, मतलब, are you aware of what went wrong in the, say, Homigo fiasco that happened?
Um, Whatever I know, Pritesh, is from the public, what is in the public domain. And what I believe happened is that उन्होंने security deposits वगैरह लिया था from the tenants, and there were rental that were due to the asset owners जहाँ से उन्होंने assets लिए थे, and I think they siphoned off the funds. They did not pay the asset owners the rentals that were due, or अचानक से they were all गायब. So whatever a little I know, Pritish, that is what happened. And that is when both the tenants, when they were checking out, they wanted their deposits back. They started creating, rightfully the uproar that हमारे deposits का है, and at the same time the asset owners were up in arms कि हमारे rentals का है. Right? So where that money went, what did they utilize in? I don't know. It's mere
So no,
speculation.
what I wanted to
But I
understand,
can, but
Chinmay,
huh, huh.
yeah, what I wanted to understand is
But
what
what
could
I
have
can
gone
tell
wrong
you,
on the
Pritesh,
business side.
sorry. So then I was actually coming to that, Pritesh, and not in terms of Homigo per se. I think जो भी हम कहेंगे Homigo का speculations होगा. The business side of things, Pritesh, ये हुआ कि there was, so pre 2017, 18, 19, this industry was really picking up. There was a lot of capital flowing in. तो ये हुआ Pritesh कि this industry also became an inventory grab model. कि the more inventory you can take up, the more number of assets you have, the more beds you have, you can raise funds at a higher valuation. It became a very inventory grab model. So उससे क्या हुआ? Lot of players who were there at that time, they took up assets at valuations which were unreasonable. Now, हमारे जैसे I'll give you an example. That was around 2021, COVID first phase के बाद, there was one asset that we were bidding for in Pune. So I think we gave them a quotation of about the asset owner. We gave them about 20 lakhs per month. Okay, and they came back and said, "Kini, it is much lower than your competitor." So we went back, जो भी spreadsheet में हो सकता है, इधर उधर करा and all that, and we went back and we said, I think 24 is the final that we can offer. हमारे competitor ने कितना offer करा था for the same building? 35. Okay, and there was absolutely no way on earth that 35 वो बना पाते उस building से. Okay, there was absolutely no way the market would have supported that. तो ये चीज Pritish 2017-18 जब funds आने लगे, people did that. One of our competitors who went bust, they had raised significant capital, also Bangalore-based company. We were wanting to take up an asset in Dehradun, and you won't believe they had paid 5 year ka rent in advance and couple of years ka security deposit. Okay, 5 years ka rent in advance. Now, जब COVID हुआ, when the inflow became zero, and they went to the asset owners कि भाई हमारे पैसा वापस कर दो, asset owner is not going to give you any money back, right? वो कहीं और लगा चुका है उसे, कोई और building बना रहा है. तो that is where majority of things fell through in the business sense, Pritish, कि लोग became greedy in terms of grabbing bets or grabbing inventory, and his valuation पे कि the maths will never work. Again, on that sense, Pritish, कि जैसे बहुत लोग हमें पूछते हैं कि why are we not in Kota yet? For example, right? Kota is a hub of student housing and stuff, right? Why are we not in Kota yet? हमने ये realize करा Pritish, जैसे मैंने आपको जयपुर का example दिया, that asset owner के लिए it's a side kind of business, right? वो उसको पड़ी नहीं है. So we give them a certain incentive on what he is getting currently, and he is happy to sign up with us. लेकिन अगर हम कोटा जाएंगे, तो कोटा में for a lot of people who are running student housing, it is the main line of business for them. Right? अगर आप चला रहे हो कोटा में property, and I go to you and say, Pritish, you give me your property, I'll manage it from now on, and I'll give you a delta, more than what you are making right now. That delta higher में इतना ज़्यादा हो जाएगा कि my maths will never work out. By the end, if I give you incentive, because it's your main line of business, you are making money the way you are making money with doing all, things, cutting corners and ये वो, तो आपका take home significantly higher है. उस पे भी मैं अगर आपको delta higher देता हूँ, तो I will never make money. And that is what happened, Practice, with a lot of the business models who folded shop or who are under the carpet right now. कि just as a valuation game, आप लेते रहो, throwing caution to the unit economics, throwing caution to profitability and so on. And this is a game, Pritish, where you can expand provided your books are profitable. मेरा अगर next asset लेना है, I cannot be all the time going back to my investor and saying, give me money, I have to take more assets. I have to get it from my own cash flows. राइट? और अगर मेरा
हम्म,
यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स काम नहीं कर रहा है, मैं प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी नहीं हूँ, तो मैं एक्सपैंड करूंगा कैसे एट सम पॉइंट इन टाइम? एंड अगर मेरा ऑक्यूपेंसी डाउन हो गया, at some point in time I will not have enough in the bank to actually even make the rental payments, and that's when
got it.
things start coming out, right? So that became a big thing about Pritesh. But a good part ये है कि अभी lot of folks even in this space, ourselves, our peers, we have realized that this is not a game where you just scale up throwing caution to profitability. This space में profitability matters much more than maybe a tech space or any other space. तो वहां पे काफी
Got it.
लोगों ने गलती करा.
Understood. Understood. Chinmoy, one last question. What are your plans for the future? How do you look to scale it up across cities and across verticals?
Um, uh, big plans, British. एक तो I think I don't think I mentioned it in the entire conversation. We as a group we are very bullish on the Bharat narrative. To be more honest, हमें लगता है कि the छोटे cities में, towns and cities में, tier 2 tier 3 cities में, there is lot more potential when it comes to student housing. So we are expanding to Patna. In fact, we are expanding to Indore, Bokaro, Bhopal. We are looking at Bhubaneswar. So these are the cities Pritesh jहाँ हम target कर रहे हैं, because they are the places where private universities have come up. They are the places where a lot of student housing is there. काफी unorganized है. So the Bharat story is something that we are sticking to, and we will be doing that. चाहे वो asset light हो, asset heavy हो, I think time will tell, and availability of capital will dictate that. But like in we will stay true to this narrative of the Bharat story. That is one thing, Pritesh. The other thing that personally we believe, Pritesh, is जैसा हमारे previous venture में भी we went out of India very soon. Typically क्या होता है, Pritesh, the way that the startup influencers, the gurus and all teach you all the time कि पहले आप local problem solve करो, फिर बाहर का देखना, ये वो. I think it's crap. If you have a good product with this, I think there should be no borders, and that is what we did our first venture also. Very soon we realized that this product has a potential outside of India. We went ahead, we explored, we tied up with the largest insurance company in Bangladesh, we tied up in insurance companies and hospitals in Malaysia, we went to Singapore and so on. So that gave us the confidence of this is venture ke liye bhi ki we have a model, we have an operating model, we have a technology to back it up where we can easily replicate it. And with given our connections and all with this, there is nothing stopping us from taking this and setting up, who live in Dhaka, for example. Dhaka, we have been researching, it's an amazing market for student housing. Taking it to Kathmandu, taking it to Southeast Asia, taking it to Middle East. So, वो मेरा बहुत बड़ा, the dream we have with this is that not just catering to the Bharat story, but also taking this model outside of India and doing it soon. Not waiting till the cows come home. तो वो हम करने वाले हैं, Pritesh, definitely. And then, as I mean, starting में कहा, at some point at the back of our minds, we have a soft corner for senior housing, senior care, all four of us. So maybe British in 4 or 5 years time, we might be bringing it back into this thing and seeing if we can actually do that. Maybe market be ready होगा India का तब तक. So we might be actually be looking to do that as well. So as of now, Priti is one of the North Star that the four of us, we personally have. Then as a next step, we given ourselves 5 years time to take the company public. That's the immediate goal we have, Pritish. That's the North Star we have. कि हमें public जाना है. We will have to do an IPO in 5 years time. So everything that we want to do is kind of working backwards from there. So that's the big dream,
All the
Pritish, we
best.
have.
All the best on
Thanks
that,
so much.
Chinmoy.
Thank you so
Chinmoy,
much.
one last bit I wanted to understand. You mentioned about
Sure.
startups should go outside early, should go abroad really early, expand abroad really early, which is something that I have been hearing a lot recently. Actually, I want to understand. Let's say a startup decides to go and expand outside India. What would be the first steps?
I think one of the things, Pritish, that we fall for, the temptation that we fall for, typically when we're a tech venture, if I take the example of my first venture, I think the temptation that we fall for is looking westwards. Is looking at a European market or an American market. But depending on the nature and type of your product or industry, for example, in healthcare, we found that Southeast Asia was in fact a gold mine because when it comes to technology in healthcare, except for Singapore, of course, the other places they were lagging India by a 5 to 6 years time. आज भी अगर आप प्रदेश मलेशिया जाओ and you start something like online pharmacy or a doctor consultation online, you still have a lot of pie to take. So they are lagging the Indian market. So I think British first temptation is for us is to look westwards. but I think we should open up our vision and our senses and say कि Southeast Asia is an amazing market. Markets of Vietnam, markets of Thailand, everyone is opening up. Those present amazing markets. तो पहला चीज तो प्रतीक्षा में ये करना चाहिए कि based on the kind of markets that we have, based on the product that we have, which will be the right markets or which are at markets are at a right time for us to enter. मैं अगर मान लीजिए प्रतीश, if I have a preventive care platform which I had, and if I'm trying to enter the US, the kind of regulatory framework, the kind of scrutiny, and the kind of competition I might face will make it extremely cost prohibitive for me. Whereas the same thing, if I take to Southeast Asia, it was a much easier way for me to work with. When I take it to Bangladesh, for instance. So depending on the product, Pritish, I think my 2 cents to all the first time entrepreneurs should be, आप ये देख लीजिए कि आपके प्रोडक्ट के लिए कौन सा मार्केट बेटर है, एंड नॉट जस्ट से कि यूएस और यूरोप जाना है तो मुझे प्रोडक्ट को इस तरह से चेंज करना है. Think it from the other way. That is one, Pritish, and it always helps if you have some kind of distribution partner or a channel partner when you're entering a new geography, because they just know the local context much better than you do. हमने दुबई एंटर करा था previous company में. There again we partnered with somebody in Dubai who acted as our partner, channel partner, and they took the platform across. तो उससे हमारा काफी, एक तो प्रोडक्ट, they give you the inputs to shape your product, and at the same time आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग भी एक टाइम लगता है मार्केट अंडरस्टैंड करने में. So having a channel partner and all reduces your expenses to that extent. तो वो भी एक चीज हो गया प्रतीश. And the last and final thing is, Pritish, my 2 cents would be that don't wait too long. Typically ये होता है कि we build something, we first try to make it available to the Indian audience, and then we try to take a step out and make it available outside and so on. उसमें challenge ये होता है प्रतीश कि the level of heterogeneity that we have in our markets, in Indian markets, we all know, right? कि India is not one market; it's million markets, right? तो हम जब तक सभी को केटर करने की ट्राई करते हैं विद दैट प्रोडक्ट, मेकिंग इट ट्वीक्स, चेंजेस कि सारे मार्केट्स को केटर हो, एवरी डेमोग्राफी शुड बी एबल टू यूज इट एंड ऑल, by the time we achieve that and then we think of taking it out, the market would have moved on. The market would have moved on. जब हमने previous venture में, when we entered Bangladesh, for instance, what the beautiful thing we realized was that the Bangladesh population was amazingly homogeneous. Bangladesh में there were two segments only, Pritesh. You have the upper class, you have the lower class. There's almost an absent middle class. And all the upper class, they act, think, do the very similar way. तो हमें product में ज़्यादा change नहीं करना पड़ा. Similarly, अभी इस केस में प्रतीश हमारे Hooliv में जब हम we're thinking of looking outside or going out, I'm not looking at a European nation or looking at US. I'm thinking Bangladesh. I mentioned you, right? Dhaka I'm looking at, because I know we have worked so much in Dhaka. I know how an amazing market it is when it comes to student housing. I have great connects in Kathmandu. I'm looking at those kind of markets, right? मैं ये नहीं कि प्रतीश मैं यूएस जाना चाहता हूँ तो let me see how I can customize Hooliv to fit in US market. I won't do that. I would rather figure out a market which suits my product. वही हो जाता है ना प्रीतिश की, हमेशा मैं वही बोलता हूँ कि people are so obsessed with product market fit, PMF हम करते हैं, and what we do at the end of the day, we come back and we start tweaking our products, क्योंकि हमें लगता है कि हमारे product में कुछ कमी है इसलिए वो market accept नहीं कर रहा है, whereas we rarely realize कि maybe we are just targeting the wrong market. The product is fine, product market fit is not necessarily your product is wrong, but your market could be different, right? तो वही वाली बात है प्रतीश. The moment you're looking to take it outside, just figure out the right market for your product, and ये नहीं कि बस लग जाओ product change करने में.
Got it. If you enjoyed this, it would mean a lot to me if you share and subscribe and share your thoughts and reviews and the guests you want. आपको सारे links मिल जाएंगे description में. दोबारा मिलते हैं next discussion में.